talent, great testimonials, demonstrations, and magical transformations.
We're all about turning a crappy situation into something positive.
$250,000 of credit card debt.
Still remember the day when no one turned up.
Throw it in the garbage and start from scratch.
I could give myself a chance, so I started something.
I mean, I think that counts as from poop to gold.
All right, welcome back, guys, to another episode of From Poop to Gold. Today, my guest is Kevin Harrington, and he is of Shark Tank fame, right? One of the original hosts of Shark Tank, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Awesome. A little bit more of your background. You are founder or co-founder of As Seen on TV.
I owned AsSeenOnTV.com,
Okay.
As Seen on TV Inc.
Yes.
So the term As Seen on TV is a generic term that nobody owns,
Okay.
but I had the corporation and the website.
Okay.
So the only
That's
IP
what matters.
and the only IP in the world of As Seen on TV is like the .com. And
Okay.
so that's what we had, that site with all the products coming there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's stuff that goes clear back to Ron Papel and
Yeah.
the Chop-O-Matic and all
Right.
that stuff and all the Vitamix and all those things.
Sure.
So what does that mean to you, the inventor of the
Yes.
infomercial?
So when I was a young entrepreneur in the early 80s, there was Ron Popeil was running Mr. Microphone and the Chop-O-Matic,
Yeah.
and these were spots, short form. And so and you'd see music spots selling 60 songs in a 60-second spot.
Okay.
And so that industry existed long before I came around.
Yes.
But I was sitting in 1984 watching, I had just ordered cable television, and then I got to Discovery Channel, which was actually Channel 30.
Yeah.
And so when I got to Channel 30, there was nothing there. And so I felt, well, I'm paying for 30. I've got 29, but there's nothing on Discovery. There was bars on the screen. So I called the cable company and they said, oh, Discovery is a new channel. They only program 18 hours a day. And they run the 6-hour block 3 times. And they figure in the middle of the night, they don't need to run it, right?
Yeah.
So I said, well, would you be interested in doing something with that time if I had a use for it?
Yeah.
And they said, if we can make money, yes. So I went in and met the Discovery people, and I started putting products on the air.
Okay.
But because we had 6 hours of
Yeah.
empty space,
Yeah.
I wasn't running 1-minute spots. I was creating 30-minute shows.
Yes.
So we did the Food Saver was one of our early ones. We got involved. Ginsu Knives was coming out. The guy that I don't own or invent any of the products necessarily.
Right.
I partner with people that do. So in the 35 years I've been doing infomercials, I never invented any of them. I didn't invent the Jack LaLanne juicer or the Food Saver or the Ginsu, but we partnered and then we put the shows together. So what we were doing was putting 30-minute shows together on cable, and this is back in 1984.
Creating actual TV programming,
Right.
in the form of a commercial.
In the form of a commercial. So it would be like a cooking show. We're selling it, cooking with a Chinese wok and then sell the wok. And so make a long story short, that was we were now able to sell $100, $200, $300 products. 'Cause
Yeah.
the Food Saver was a $300 product in the very beginning. So that was the difference between long form, which was infomercial, and short form, because we came along and said, let's sell everything. Let's sell fitness products, Gazelle. We can sell juicers. We can sell, so we opened the market. This is before QVC ever started.
Yeah.
And so that became that was sort of the birth of the modern day infomercial, right? And so, so some people say, oh, Kevin is a creator, the inventor of the infomercial. And we just started doing dozens and then hundreds. And then I said, well, if there's empty space in the US, because our shows were a bell-shaped curve.
Right.
It's sort of like a movie. A movie comes out, it peaks, and now it's out of the theaters. But it, maybe did 100 million and then
it dies
died.
off week after week.
And then what do? They take it to Europe. They take it to Latin America, Middle East, Asia. Just dub it into the local language. So I started going in 1990 to the international TV conferences, the Cannes Film Festival, MIPCOM, and meeting all the TV people all around the world. So I started licensing the shows in Europe, in Latin America, to Sky Channel, to TV Tokyo in Japan. And all of a sudden, we had Tony Little doing his Gazelle in 25 languages
Yeah.
all around the world. And all we had to do was just ship it into the market.
Yep.
They'd run it on TV, and then we had to have a local partner that would take the phone calls, ship the product, provide the customer service and the banking. So we set up these partnerships around the world. So this was from 84 to the early 90s, and that sort of is, I call it, the heyday of the infomercial space.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a tremendous success story, especially your foresight to be like, hey, this can work here, but if we, translate it into other languages, we can get that programming elsewhere. And so basically, like you said, it was a matter of so on TV you have interruptive advertising, right? Your commercial break coming in that no one wants to really sit through or whatever. Right. But this was actually programmed commercials.
Right.
That was the programming, and so that was kind of your innovation on it.
Yeah, and we started doing just kind of like the downtime on the stations, but then the station said, well, hey, you're running at 3:00 in the morning. Would you be willing to buy time from us at 9 in the morning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just experiment with that.
And we said, sure. Well, what do you want to sell it for? So this is how the math worked. In a 30-minute show, the TV station had 7 minutes of advertising to sell. So let's say they got $1,000 a minute. They grossed $7,000. I bought the whole half hour for $7,000 because I gave them the same amount of money that they got in the 7 minutes.
Yeah.
But
for their bottom line, they don't care.
Their bottom line didn't care at all. In fact, they actually made more money because they didn't have to pay for the program.
That's right.
Because they were licensing the rights to the show.
It's an efficiency thing.
I said, I'll give you the $7,000. You give me the 30 minutes. So in effect, we had way more time and more time to tell the story and sell the product, and the economics made sense for them. But we now had a 30-minute show that could be very powerfully selling things.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so awesome. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about kind of your background as a salesman.
Yeah.
Because I think it's kind of similar to mine. I mean, I grew up on a farm. I sold potatoes door to door.
Oh, wow.
I've sold like window washing door to door, alarm systems, all this kind of stuff. But what's a little bit of your sales background?
Okay, so when I was 15, I'm one of 6 kids, and my father was a bartender for many years, and then he saved up enough money to own his own bar, Harrington's Irish Pub. Okay, so I started when I was 11 working for my father in his bars, and he said, "But Kevin, you got to own your own business." Okay, so when awesome. and by the way, I was the 4th one of 6 kids, and I paid my own way through high school and my clothes, and when I turned 16, I wanted a car.
Yeah.
My dad wasn't like, "Oh, well, here's your fancy
your
car." It's like, you got to go make it the money, right? So when I was 15, grew up in Ohio, and if you had a driveway with cracks and water got in there and froze, it would triple the size of the crack,
right?
In the winter. So I started a driveway sealing business when I was 15. I'd knock on the door. Bring them out, say, see these cracks, and hey, we'll fill them, and then we'll beautify the driveway. And so I was doing in the summer months about 10 of those projects a week, sealing the driveways. Yeah. And I had to hire a guy to drive the truck.
It's a big project.
Yeah, it was a kind of a labor involved business, but I'd string a little thing across the driveway, and I'd take a before and after picture. It's sort of in my world of selling
with like a Polaroid,
sort of I call it a magical transformation, right? So we'd show the before, we'd show the after, because I'm 15 years old knocking on the door, and they'd look at me like, "Where's the owner of the company? Are you here to see Johnny?" Okay. I'm like, no, I am the owner, right? They're like, "Well, I don't know. Well, I did the guy across the street, right?" Yeah. So that we had to get one in the neighborhood first. But so that was my start as a driveway sealing company, and Harrington's Driveway Sealing. And then when I got to college, and I had that for about 3 years, but it was a summertime business only.
Yeah.
So now I got to college, I had year-round bills, right?
Yeah.
So because in high school, I was still living at home.
Yeah.
Got to college, I had an apartment, and I had school, I had books, I had education. So my dad said, "Well, you can't be doing driveway sealing, in the middle of the winter. You need a full-time business."
Yeah.
So he was my first mentor.
Season round business.
Season round. So I said, "What's year-round?" Heating and air conditioning. Okay. So I started a heating and cooling company.
Okay.
And what I did was I went into the courthouse and bought all the real estate transactions. So if you bought a new home, it was a public record, and you, I would call them, and I had a little couple people working in my phone room.
Yeah.
We would outbound telemarket. Hey, congratulations on the purchase of your house. We've got a gift for you because you're a new homeowner. Don't turn that furnace on until you get a safety check, because it can be a dangerous appliance in your home with the carbon monoxide and stuff. And by the way, we're going to give you a free safety check. We'll clean it while we're there too, absolutely free. And then I would go out with the furnace cleaning guys, and I'd, hey, this is a 20-year-old furnace, very inefficient. It's got that pilot light that burns 24/7. We got a new system called spark ignition. It only comes on when the furnace calls for heat.
Yeah.
And it was a new technology that Carrier had just patented. So I got a license to sell this new high efficient furnace, and it would pay for itself because, the cost of a furnace was, I could buy a furnace for $200 installed for $1,000. And so it paid for itself in about 3 years. So we were selling furnaces and air conditioning systems my freshman year in college, my sophomore year. By the time I got to my junior year, we were doing the equivalent in today's world of over $5 million in sales. I had 25 employees, 6 trucks on the road, and I'm going to class. So I'm like, I don't think I can do this anymore.
Yeah.
So I get to the office at 2:00 in the afternoon. It's like, where, why aren't you here?
Yeah.
So make a long story short, I dropped out of college and built the business.
Saw that one coming.
We had a great run, but it was very labor intensive, and I ended up selling it to one of my employees. So,
there you go.
But I really learned and loved knocking on doors, closing the sale. And of course, it was around this time I started tuning into Zig Ziglar and many of his teachings. So learned a lot from Zig.
That's awesome. So what's really cool about that, I think, is that what you just described as far as your telemarketing funnel is what I'll call it.
Right.
It's very much like a funnel of today, right?
We never used that word back then.
No, you didn't, right. But basically, that's exactly what you're describing is offer something of value to someone for free.
Yeah.
Use that to kind of build the trust with them.
Yes.
Show them what you can do, and then have a moment to add additional value with an upsell.
Yes.
And move them further and further down the customer journey, right?
Exactly.
And you're just doing it all face to face and over the phone.
And we were data mining because we were, going into the courthouse to get all these records. They didn't just send them out to everybody. You had to go down and get them.
Yeah. So guys, nothing is new in this world. It's all been done. It's just now being done digitally, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So the theme of this podcast and its name is From Poop to Gold, right? So when did you have a really crappy situation in your life or in your career that you were able to turn into something positive?
Very, very good question. So we were I got into the infomercial space as we were producing a lot of kitchen shows, and I was sitting at the Philadelphia Home Show, and Billy Mays was there. I don't know if you know Billy with the beard. Okay, right? Yeah. So Billy he was washing a car. He had this tube that went down to a bucket, and it was just a bucket of water. But as he's washing a car, the water, it had a reverse valve, and as he would do this, the water would come up, and it was called the Washmatic, and he's washing the car, and I'm like, that's pretty amazing. I said to Billy, how do you, where'd you get the product and this and that? We shot an infomercial with him, make a long story short, but we started doing all these infomercials. So we had Billy Mays and Tony Little and Jack LaLanne. And so business is great. And then one Monday morning, I walk into my office and my CFO was freaking out. And we were doing $100 million a year at this point. This was in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And so my CFO said, you won't believe it. The bank just grabbed $2 million out of our account. And I said, but we only had like 2.2 in there. And I said, yeah, they left us with 200. And I said, well, what did they say? I mean, you've talked to them? Yeah, our returns were higher than they liked. So we had a quality issue with one of our items.
Okay, yeah.
And just one item was quality. We had a little bit of an issue. It was going from 10% to 15% returns. And so they had a clause in our merchant agreement that at any time, if they felt they weren't covered, we had a $500,000 deposit in their bank against future returns and chargebacks.
Okay.
But when you're doing $100 million a year at a 10% return, it's a $10 million kind of situation. So they're like, hey, we need another couple million here.
Yeah.
Grabbed it right out of my account, virtually shut us down because that was my media dollars, my payroll, my inventory money.
That's everything.
I didn't have $2 million in excess cash.
Exactly.
That was my operating capital.
That's right.
So we were virtually out of business with just one swipe like that.
So basically that was all your payroll, your marketing budget. That was all your operating capital.
Yeah, exactly. We were running a $2 million a week sale because we're doing $100 million a year. And so at $2 million a week, we kept rolling. So yeah, the $2 million, that was 1 week of sales, but that was a $2 million kind of roll, media to inventory to payroll week to week.
Yeah.
And it actually was profits. So because I didn't start with any cash, I started the whole company with $25,000, and as we built the company, we were financing the growth out of profits.
Okay, just bootstrapping.
So bootstrap, right? And because, I was a young entrepreneur and just trying to make it happen. And so we ended up getting but for about a month, they had us technically out of business. Oh, wow. And so we ended up getting 1.6 million of it back. So we let them keep an extra 400, but we were able to survive instead of, closing the doors down. But it was a brutal moment. And I think probably we came out of it with a big learning curve. The first thing that we learned was don't use one merchant account for a company with 10 products. Okay. So, because if you've got 10 products, 9 of them are running 8% return, but one of them now is running 20%.
Yeah, you had one product essentially becoming a liability to the other ones that were just fine.
Exactly. So what we ended up doing was setting up each product into its own separate corporation, so that and we had separate merchant accounts, and this way, if we had one item that was bad, let them shut that merchant account down or let them take a bunch of money against the sales. This wasn't even a huge product for us. Yeah. It was a small product that was giving the bank lots of phone calls and chargebacks, but but the rest of our business was very solid. So we started setting up separate ventures. Yeah. And, and it worked out to our advantage across the board because we needed separate accounting for royalty structures, and there was profit splits in some cases anyway. So we actually, it was a good move for us. And now to this day, I don't know if you hear about this, Daniel, but a lot of guys running around in this industry have a tough time with merchant accounts. Yeah. Right. And so we had our first challenge with merchant accounts in 1991. Okay. Mm-hmm. So learned quite a bit in the process.
And once you got that sorted out, put you on a much better foundation.
Absolutely.
To grow everything going forward.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's a great story. So let me talk just a little bit about your creative process.
Yes. Sure.
What is that like for you when coming up with a new idea? Like, for example, you obviously had a lot of infomercials and things like that. Are you a writer? Do you write yourself?
I'm not a writer, but I consider myself, sort of a positioning kind of guy, so I started learning some formulas in my world, and just to throw one of them out, I think I look for products that solve problems. Okay. Right. Yep. So, I mean, I think we all do that. Yep. Right. But in the selling process, let's take a 30-minute show. Yeah. We do 3 10-minute pods. Yep. And each 10-minute pod has a tease, a please, and a seize. Okay. We tease with an attention-getting problem. Yep. We please with the solutions to the problem via testimonials and magical transformations, demonstrations, and then we seize with an irresistible offer and then a CTA at the end. Yep. So a typical infomercial has a 10-minute pod, tease, please, seize, 10-minute pod, 10-minute pod. You'll see formula. The same 2-minute spot, call to action, run 3 times. Yeah. And that was kind of maybe the old days where the same one would just run and run and run, but repetition was okay. It worked. And that's what we did. As we got more sophisticated, we changed it up a little bit, the spots. So we didn't want them to see the exact same thing. But on the creative side, we would, a lot of times, if we had a great presenter, or as they called them in the day, pitchmen, Billy Mays,
Yeah.
one of the best.
Yep.
Arnold Morris, the Ginsu guy,
Yep.
one of the best knife guys ever.
Right.
We had John Parkin, the little guy with the bow tie. And, his first infomercial was a car wax show.
Yeah.
And we took a Rolls Royce and we lit it on fire because we put the car wax on first and the wax saved the paint from getting charred.
Yeah.
And so we did magical, magical types of things, right?
Yeah.
So, and those were sort of the attention getters, right? And so that was the process. Was sometimes we wanted either a good pitch person or sometimes a celebrity, because celebrities had a little bit of credibility, obviously, and could give us a channel stopping kind of power, as people were going from a movie and now people don't tune into infomercials.
Right,
Okay. In fact,
right.
today you see in the guides, they'll say, get rid of your wrinkles or something.
Yeah.
They don't say infomercial, please watch. Right.
Yeah.
So our creative was get a good presenter, pitch person, talent, great testimonials, demonstrations, and magical transformations.
Awesome. And obviously it worked because, like $5 billion later, is that what I
We
meant?
did, yeah. We had some really big successes, and the funny thing is, people, when my son, who's 30 years old, first joined me, I remember his first big project that he got all excited about. This is going to be a grand slam and all that. It bombed.
Okay.
And so he's like just running around with his head, down, like, I'm the dad. He said, he put 6 months of his life into this project, right? And we don't just walk after we test. We go back and tweak again. And if you ever heard the story, Carl Deichler, who started Beachbody, Carl worked for me in my media department back in the 80s. And so Carl tells the story about Beachbody when they owned P90X.
Yeah,
and when P90X first tested, it didn't work. But they went to a second, a third. I think he says it was the 17th time with changes that finally popped. So I don't do 17, but he was seeing some progress. But generally, we test, we tweak, and if it doesn't work, we move on to the next one, okay? Because it's just you can't get blood out of a turnip, right? So I said to Brian,
testing we do now.
You got to move on. It didn't work, okay? And I've said, Winston Churchill says, success is being able to go from failure to failure without the loss of enthusiasm, okay? So I'm like,
love that quote.
don't worry, let's go, let's find the next one. And then but how do you deal with failure, Dad? And I'm like, I've had enough that I realize that's part of business, and we're going to go find a winner now.
That's right.
So that's the stepping process of dealing with this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's so great. Well, I've got a gift for you here, Kevin. This is a copy of our book From Poop to Gold.
Yeah. Hey, that's fantastic.
As well as a little bottle of Unicorn Gold from Squatty Potty,
Nice.
which is a toilet spray.
Yes,
and then there's
beautiful.
another client we have coming up. It's called Taos Bakes. There's a little snack in there.
Oh, cool.
But
Thank you. Yay.
So thank you so much for coming on the show. Where do our listeners find you? Where should they look you up?
Yeah. So my website, kevinharrington.tv. And got all the details of how we do business and things there. And thanks for having me today.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on. And guys, remember to like, to subscribe, to follow, share, all that good stuff. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.